Hey everyone, I hope you had a great day. Today we are looking at some new malicious compliance stories. I hope you enjoy them. The first story is called I Have to Stay Full-Time? A little over 14 years ago, I was almost 2 years into a contract I had signed to be a full-time salaried pharmacist. I was about 5 months pregnant and health-wise was starting to deteriorate. I asked my supervisor about going part-time. She said since I hadn't fulfilled my contract, it was for a relocation bonus of $2,000, I'd have to pay back all or some of it. Salaried, I had full benefits, sick days and short-term disability, which is what maternity leave usually falls under. Changing to part-time, I would immediately lose all benefits and have to go under my husband's insurance and basically make no money while out on maternity leave. So I stuck it out. About 2 weeks later, my blood pressure is out of control when in an upright position, so I'm sentenced to bed rest. I got so bored I read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince in 24 hours. I also got over 4 months laying around the house, making 60% of my salary on short-term disability. Plus, their insurance covered the extra 4 weeks of hospital stay. The next story is called Just Do It His Way. This was a long time ago. In a workplace, I tried very hard to block out of my memory, but this one was one of the great situations that I remember. This place was a warehouse for an automotive assembly plant where we warehouse workers would place parts into order on carts so they can be used on the production line in the order the cars are being built. This process, when done perfectly, is very efficient and makes the line run smoothly. However, nothing is ever perfect, and this process can also make things run very poorly. This is one of those times. It is important to note that the warehouse is staffed by a different company than what runs the assembly plant. And while things are normally calm between the two companies, situations like this tend to get a bit heated with the warehouse company facing penalties for screw-ups. One of the areas where we sequence the parts for the lines comes from a group of people who put the parts how they are supposed to be on a cart. That cart is then loaded into a trailer, and the trailer is brought to the plant and unloaded. The carts are sent to the line, while empty carts are loaded back on the trailer and sent back to our warehouse. This system works pretty well, but there's some room for improvement. The process manager Doofus decides that he has the answer to this problem in the form of a new way to load and unload the trucks, and goes about telling all of the people in this department to do things his way. No attempt to revise the standard process, just do it his way. Now, the people who work in this area know what they are doing. They do this job all day long and can see where the Doofus method is going to have the materials loaded in a fashion that will waste a large amount of time. Upon pointing this out, Doofus angrily waves their concerns away and spouts the now famous lines there. It looks good on paper, so it will work just fine. He then proceeds to stand around to make sure that things are done his way, and when things start to fall behind due to his error, he shouts at the people for not following his scheme. He then leaves for lunch with the promise that he will be back, and if they follow his process exactly, things will get on track and improve. Now, the Doofus method is not the standard method for doing this job. We have process manuals printed that show the most ideal method of doing things, and deviations from that should be limited to only processes that prove to be effective in reducing the time as seen by process analysts. Everyone knows that the Doofus method is not going to work, so standard compliance would be to go back to the process listed in the manual. But this is malicious compliance. Everyone involved in this process decided to follow the Doofus method exactly, despite the fact that everyone knows where this will end up. As predicted, things start falling behind more and more, and when Doofus returns, he finds a department that is on the verge of shutting the line down. He begins yelling at anyone and everyone for not following his precious method and responds to any challenges with, "It looks good on paper. It has to be something you all are doing." As things start getting more and more backed up, the manager at the plant has noticed things are not as they should be. She drives over to our warehouse to find out what is going on and why this department that normally does not have issues is having issues. Why are things getting so backed up over here? The line is close to stopping. We started a new system of doing things and someone is not following the new process. Is this the standard process for this area? Why am I just now hearing of this? It's a new method that I came up with. It should be saving time. Well, it's not. Go back to the standard process. But it looks good on paper. If we can find out what is happening, we can get it fixed. The line manager, in increasing irritation, we don't have time to figure out where your idea went wrong. We need to get moving. Go back to the standard process. But the paper. At this point, the line manager has had enough and cuts him off. I don't care about your paper. Go back to the standard process. Doofus retreats to his office, everyone goes back to the normal process and the situation is sorted out within an hour. We later find out that Doofus has been reamed by just about everyone else that holds even the slightest authority over him, since he never discussed with anyone what he was doing, what he was planning, and never had permission to do what he did. The phrase, "it looks good on paper," has since become a running joke between the workers there. And Doofus was fired a few months later due to unrelated issues. What do you think about today's stories? Let me know in the comment section below. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit the like button. It really helps the channel to grow. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. The last story is called Being Efficient in a Bank? No thanks. Around 2010, I was working an afternoon gig at a local bank, in part to complete an internship class for my coursework. The job entailed running batches of checks through a massive check scanner, manually running a tape and then hopping over to a computer to correct any errors on the teller or customer's part when the deposits were made. After the bank closed at 3 p.m, I was also the one who would stay. I would print out customer statements and run a long list of processes on multiple machines to update everyone's accounts with the day's transactions. After that, I would upload the information to the website, backup and run tapes on all of the bank's data. And then sort and file through end-of-day reports for the different department managers to review the next morning. I would then lock up the bank and go home. In hindsight, quite a bit of responsibility for a college student. But it was a hometown bank. Now, my manager was a classic Karen before the term existed. She managed through fear, tried to cover it with small talk and banter, and didn't like anyone to shine except herself in the department. My two co-workers, full-time bank employees, would always discuss how terrible it was to work for her full-time. Anyway, I was raised to be respectful and work my hardest, which to me meant trying to be as quick at my job as possible, thus saving the company time and money. The closing duties I described took anywhere from 1.5 to 4 hours to complete, depending on which batch of statements were printing and how often the printers jammed. After about a month of doing this every day, I realized much of this time was due to the checklist I had been trained with. It was doing one task at a time, when actually more than one process could be done at once, many times way out of order of the list. But you had to understand everything's part to really see this. I set about making these efficiencies and brought my time down to 1/2 to 2.5 hours after 2 months. I thought this would make my manager happy, but nothing was said about me getting out of there faster, and so I just kept on doing my job as best as I could. Fast forward 2 more months and this bank is updating its servers to allow for real-time banking. Previously, unless I updated the website each night, balances and transactions wouldn't show up. They brought in 2 large server cases in the office I worked in, but it took another 3 to 4 weeks for the actual hardware to come in. Since the old servers were still installed, they set the empty towers right in the middle of our office. Now, our office was a very long room. The statement printers on one side and all the computers I had to work on each night at the other. Remember I said the printers jammed a lot? Well, with all the computers and servers on my end of the office, I never could hear the beep telling me they had jammed, but I could see the red error light. This had historically been my little check. Every few minutes, I'd turn around to make sure the printers hadn't jammed. I made sure I did this because every minute they weren't printing was another minute I'd be working. The statements took longer to print than the rest of my duties combined. However, the way they placed the empty server towers blocked my view, forcing me to have to get up and walk halfway to the printers each time to make sure they were jammed. So I simply turned them 90 degrees. Since the front and backs were full of air ventilation holes, this allowed me to maintain my line of sight, saving me and the bank time. Once again, I thought it was a great idea. No one is using these yet, and when they do, they won't be in that location anymore anyway. In hindsight, I should have known better. I came in around 2 PM after classes the next day and noticed the towers were turned back. I thought that was odd. Why would anyone turn them back? I asked my coworker, and she told me the manager was angry that I had touched them without asking, which, as I've learned later in life, was fair enough, but still an overreaction. I asked if they being turned messed up some workflow I wasn't thinking of. But no, she hadn't even noticed them until about 11 AM, when another employee mentioned they had been turned, so her reaction was pure malice for not having been asked. When she saw I had come in, she pulled me aside and asked aggressively why I had touched them. So, thinking this was my chance to highlight my efficiencies, told her all I had done in an effort to make the closing routines more efficient. That was evidently the wrong answer. I was instructed to do the checklist exactly how it was laid out, with no changes whatsoever, because that's how it's supposed to be. Even though I had been doing it my quicker way for 2 months already, with no downsides. With regard to the printer, she told me to stop being lazy and just get up and walk to it to check on it. Cue malicious compliance. I stopped caring about speed, followed the checklist to a T, and unless I had somewhere to be, I didn't worry about checking on the printer very often. If it was still printing after my closing checklist was done, I could always read or do homework at my desk. I wouldn't want to be efficient with the bank's payroll after all. Suffice to say, it went back to taking 1.5 to 4 hours per night and costing the bank much more money in my checks. Good for me, I guess. Shortly after, I found a job working in an electronics department at a superstore and switched over with 2 weeks' notice. There wasn't time to train a new person, so that manager had to take over the night routine until a new one could be found. During my last day, I took it upon myself to try and give her some constructive criticism on how her management style affected me and stopped me from caring about my job. I'm not sure if it was effective, but at least I got it off my chest. I ran into one of my former coworkers at the store a few months later, and evidently someone else told my former boss she was a vile and mean person, and she was probably going to hell for how she treated people. Part of her Karen persona was being very religious, and this seemed to have scared her into at least some meekness, at least according to my former coworker. Thanks for watching the video. If you had fun watching the video, please subscribe to the channel for more content. And please let me know what you think about the video in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.